Okay, enjoy. Have a good day. Right in the middle. Good morning, good afternoon at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ITBA Seminar at the Curragh and the South Leinster Regional Awards. I'm delighted to see so many people here. It's really important that we keep having these kind of seminars and information sharing to make us all better breeders, or the best breeders that we can be. So I hope that you all enjoy the day, and without further ado, I'll hand you over to our compere, our man with the questions, Leo Powell. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kathy, and good afternoon to you all. It's great to see, as Kathy said, so many people out here today, and what a panel we have. I suppose the only tragedy is that we have so little time to speak with them, because obviously we want to get everybody out for the first race, and Jessie is so keen to get out that we have to assume she probably has the winner of the first. But time will tell. I'm going to speak to each of the panelists in turn, and then we will hopefully have some time for questions at the end from the floor. Don't be shy. I mean, there's a huge amount of experience and wealth of knowledge here to tap into, and I would encourage you to do so. I suppose in advance, I'd like to thank them all for giving of their time and on such a busy day. Kathy for entrusting me with the role, and to say well done to the office, to Peter, Danielle and Hannah for organising today. Our theme is, I mean, many might think it's just about breeding, but I suppose it's also covering the racing end of it from the point of view of people here who are from the Racehorse Owners Association as well. But it's the importance of fillies in breeding and racing. And it was interesting. I'm a big collector of books, and I went to my library, which I have 400 or 500 books about horses and racing, and there's probably about 10 books in it on breeding. It's such an important area of the business. It's such an important part of our lives, and yet, it gets very little in-depth study. So hopefully we learn quite a bit from our panelists today. I'm going to start maybe with Pat Downs, principally Pat, because you're the only one of the panel who doesn't have a Wikipedia entry and a profile on that. So maybe just for the benefit of people here, just to give me a little bit about your background in the bloodstock business.
Okay, I'll speed through this. Originally from Limerick. I was born into a half legal, half agricultural stroke equine family. Seemed to get the equine gene as opposed to the legal one. And I pursued horses really from the beginning, from a very young age. I had the most unspectacular, brief career as an amateur rider, which was so unsuccessful, it was very, very short, thankfully for a lot of people, including myself. I came to the Curragh in 1983 and worked in Brownstown Stud with Tony Butler. I then did the National Stud course in 1984, and I stayed in the National Stud for 7 years, selling nominations, working with John Clark. And I then did some travelling and speed forward to 1998, just past 26 years now. I started working for His Highness as a manager in Ireland.
I mean, it's definitely, I suppose, in terms of if people had ambitions as a young person to be involved with such an organisation as the Aga Khan Studs would be very exciting, but also very, very daunting because of the depth of history that is associated with it.
Yeah, listen, it was a tremendous opportunity. I suppose 26 years ago, there was certain naivety about me, maybe a bit of ignorance on the history as well. But I would hope in the intervening period I have I have a greater appreciation now of what the family have achieved over the last 4 and now nearly 5 generations.
Sure. I mean, it's, dare I say it, it's an atypical organization because most people who are in the business are breeding, the vast majority, I suppose, in terms of individual foals that are born every year, are breeding to sell, or they're breeding with sales in mind. That isn't the focus for the Aga Khan studs, obviously.
No, most certainly not. And I mean, we're 102 years now from when His Highness's grandfather started purchasing fillies in Europe, and with the sole aim of obviously producing racehorses, but producing racehorses to come back, enhance the families. We have, she's well documented, we have, going back to the very beginning, Mumtaz Mahal, who today is still very, very relevant in our stud book.
And it's interesting you say that because, I mean, just for the sake of younger people in particular, Mumtaz Mahal was the champion 2-year-old 101 years ago. And yet we talk about her influence still today.
Absolutely. I think she is Zarkava's 9th dam. And Zarkava has given us Zarak, who's a really important stallion for us now. And Zarkava's daughter has produced, now she's only maiden winner, but a filly that won a couple of weeks ago that was highly impressive in France. So the relevance today goes all the way back to, as you say, 101 years ago.
And is there an added pressure for you and the team in the sense of that you're the custodians of such a long tradition? You know, and I mean, I noticed, for example, in press releases afterwards or in social media postings, I mean, Princess Zara now, who's, I suppose, to the forefront of the organization, you know, always talking about this is the 5th, 6th, 7th generation of families. Is that a big pressure on you and the team every year when you sit down with that aim of producing a classic winner in 4 years' time and you're putting the matings together?
I don't know that I'd call it pressure. It's important. And, you know, we do need to come up with a critical mass of good race fillies. Certainly not every year, but every 2 to 3 years, we for the progression of the operation, we need to keep producing those fillies. So we are keepers of an unbelievable data of notes, and it can be both pleasing and quite depressing to look back on some of the decisions that we've taken going back over the years while we've been involved. But no, as I said, no, I don't ever see it as pressure, but it is highly satisfying when we get some fillies, particularly, that can compete at the highest level.
Now, I've had the great privilege of working closely with you and George and the team years ago when looking at the entirety of the organization every year and trying to put valuations on them, a very, very difficult but a very enjoyable task. But one of the things that always struck me was this idea that, you know, again, with your trainers, that you continued the associations with the progeny of particular mares and families. Some will be French, some will be Irish. But that you have this incredible database of information, so you'll know about late developing families, you'll know about temperaments, you'll know about a huge range of stuff. I mean, that must be almost unique in terms of breeding organizations.
Yeah, I think it's very important, but I think it's also appropriate, maybe, given the talented trainers I'm surrounded with here, that we rely on the trainers an awful lot. And the best example I can give of that is, how did we end up keeping Zarkava's mother, who never ran, and we had an awful lot of the family. She wouldn't have stood out as a filly necessarily that we would have held on to. But the one thing, and again, it's communicating with the trainers and noting what they're saying. And John Ox, to his credit, he only ever got to do one piece of work with that filly. and in typical John Ox understated, I think she's quite nice. And she got an injury and she was retired. But it was that very short little piece of information from John that encouraged us to keep her and say, okay, we'll give her a go.
Yeah.
And that is, it doesn't always work, but that was the good fortune of taking note of what one of our trainers had to say and saying that's important information.
Sure. I mean, you now have a stallion profile between the farm here and the farm in France. But I suppose in terms of your breeding, your planning and your matings, I suppose, is it an advantage that you're in a situation that you can use stallions that commercial breeders may shun? And, can you use that to your advantage?
I don't know if we can use it to our advantage, but we will certainly look at horses for longer than a more commercial breeder might feel they can do. I mean, if a horse goes cold, you have to look at the reason they're gone cold, and maybe they'll be too cold for us.
Yeah.
But in some cases, we might feel that commercially they have been downgraded, but that we still see some value in them. And there are some horses that we would be happy to use in the knowledge that commercially they are not particularly hot. But for a lot of horses, there'll be a reason why they're not hot, and we have to take cognizance of those reasons too.
Okay. I think it was John Hislop who said that breeding race horses is an inexact science. There are certain principles, however, that are a help to success. In terms of either principles or ingredients that for you are important when it comes to, I mean, I think you have I think historically His Highness has wished to have a broodmare band of about 165, and he believes that this is really the center of the organization, not the stallions, it's the mares that they have. So what are, when it comes to retaining mares or selling mares, and obviously every now and again somebody will benefit from the sale of a mare as well, and that's to be welcomed because it keeps them coming back, I suppose. But what for you are the 2 or 3 main ingredients that determine whether you hold on to the mare or not?
I suppose soundness. We'd like to know about their soundness for racing, their level of ability, what are they like as individuals, and maybe most importantly, how well represented in the book are we with the family. And if we feel we're running a bit light on certain families, because one thing that we are encouraged not to do is to lose a family out of the book. And if we do, that's possibly bad management on our part. So we try not to do that. And we will try and mix things up a bit. But I suppose the one thing we can't do, I mean, we've a lot of speed stallions now, or what are considered to be speed stallions. Our mares tend not to work particularly well with speed horses. But a speed horse, as opposed to, a good 10, 12 furlong horse with speed, they're entirely different things in our world. So I think we find that we get the best success with horses from a mile to 1.25 miles and 1.5 miles.
But again, that probably sets you apart again from, I suppose, the commercial world, because it seems to be now that it is about speed. It's 2-year-olds, something to win the Brocklesby, something to win the first day out at the Curragh, without necessarily looking at the longevity of the families, whereas that's really your focus. And I suppose historically, and perhaps it will continue into the future, ultimately the production of a classic horse.
Which is our aim. But as I said, we just the breeding pool is getting very narrow, and it's something that I think collectively we all have to be aware of. And there's absolutely no doubt that there are stallions that don't get that could do a much better job than they're being given the chance to do. And I don't think, personally, I'm a fan of middle distance racing.
Yeah.
That's what I enjoy. So I'm very fortunate to be working with animals that's their target. But I'm not saying that we ignore what are considered to be the faster horses, but we do find, and we have found when we've tried a few different things, that we are breeding horses that have no trip, and that's the worst of all.
Right.
So that's something that we certainly take on board. We try and learn from and not repeat it.
Listen, thank you very much. I set my alarm here at 15 minutes and we're 3 seconds away from it. So you can now relax for a few minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Downs. Now, I'm going to set this again because it's the easiest way to do it. I'm going to move on to the lady sitting here beside me. And okay, I'm going to slightly embarrass you first now, but she's literally one of our greatest ever equestriennes. And before Jessie turned her attention to racing, she represented Ireland in eventing at European, world and Olympic level. It was only in 1989 that Jessie took out a license to train. And given her success since then, I'm sure other trainers are delighted she didn't do so earlier. 30 years ago, she had a landmark success with Also Grumpy when he won the Galway Hurl. But since then, she has become one of the most successful trainers in both the National Hunt and Flat Spheres. 11 Cheltenham wins, which includes the Holy Trinity of the Gold Cup, Champion Hurl and the Champion Chase, have been followed by Group 1 successes in Ireland, Britain and France, most notably with Fillies. And I'll just name a few: Alpha Centauri, Albina, Alpine Star, Mill Isle, Discoveries, No Speak Alexander and Magical Lagoon. You obviously are an advocate of racing mares and racing fillies.
Yeah, I always have been, even because really when I started training, I think I trained mostly fillies because they were cheaper to get hold of, and if you minded them and looked after them, they won you races.
Can I just tell you, I went to John Fowler one day at the races. I was asked by the ITBA to get a little bit of a promo thing going for fillies, and he had such success with them. And I said to him, why is it that you have so much success with fillies? He said, because I can't afford geldings. So I couldn't use it as a promotion. So you can make up for that deficit now.
No, mainly when I started, fillies, either breeders sent you fillies because that's what they wanted to do, and then the buying fillies, you could buy a good-looking filly with a pedigree a lot cheaper than you could a gelding. And I was always looking at the end product. If she was a good filly, then someone would probably want to buy her at the end if the owner was not a breeder. And I saw it more of a commercial thing. If it did go wrong, go lame, it has another life.
Yeah, sure. Which brings me neatly to, I remember travelling with Johnny one time and quizzing him about a filly that he bought, Danspeed, who was a multiple Grade 1 winning filly, daughter of Dancing Dissident, stud at the National Stud, who was less than a big success. I think bred at Grangemore Stud, I think Liz Colleran bred. And she was a half-sister to Galmoy, who had been a Cheltenham hero. And Johnny bought her for?
I think £1,200. She was only a foal, but he bought her for £1,200. Actually, no, I think she was a yearling. For £1,200, she was a yearling, actually. And, we couldn't. Galmoy had already won the 3 mile hurdle at Cheltenham. He couldn't believe he could get her so cheaply. But, that's 30 probably years ago. And people weren't buying fillies. People weren't buying even fillies with pedigrees because there wasn't there wasn't the promotion of races. Fillies at that time didn't get £5. I can't remember when that came in. You could tell me that.
A lot later, yeah.
They weren't getting £5 allowance. There weren't that many mares races. There wasn't all the schemes, the mares bumpers, hurdles, chases, and even on the flat, the fillies races. But, and it was she just happened be good and be able to take on the geldings, and she was a very good filly.
Yeah, and such a pity that to lose her without her getting to stud, because her sisters went on to breed good horses, and the line has continued
Yeah.
to this day.
Oh, it has. It was just sad that she hurt herself actually on the flat, not over jumping a fence, on the flat at Punchestown, and we couldn't save her. But that's always a risk. And that's what people actually will tell you. When they're racing well-bred mares, there's always a risk that they could get hurt.
Sure. I mean, your owners, I suppose, are a mix of owner breeders and people who buy in the commercial market. Do you see differences in approaches from those two groups as such?
Yeah, there's definitely a different approach. If you have an owner breeder, they have a plan A, B, C. It doesn't matter whether it's national hunt or flat. They want to win a race. They want then maybe let's get black type, small black type, and then the real target is the big black type, and that's their ambition. If you've got an owner who's not a breeder, they want to win a race, and then they would like to win money. And so they're always looking to win, they don't mind winning handicaps or anything. But they like to, at the end of the day, win maybe get black type for their filly. But they approach it from a different way to the actual owner breeder. Has an absolute set thing. They sort of say, they almost get insulted if you say, well, I think I'll run it in handicap. They want to go to get the black type.
Sure. And then for the likes of the Nearchus family or whatever, it's a different approach. They're developing a family that they're going to stay with as well. I mean, I know they had a recent reduction, but in the past, that was their aim, was to develop those families.
Yeah, keep the same families going, keep developing them. And it was just when I started training for them, I found it very interesting because some of the families went cold, maybe for a couple of generations, and then a branch of a family would go cold, and then something would come up, and then that side of the family's flying again. But it is, I always say that if the taproot of the family is strong, it'll come out somewhere.
Sure.
It may take, sometimes it takes a couple of generations. Pat, you'd know more about that sometimes for a couple of generations they go cold and you're almost giving up with them, and then they take off again.
Yeah, well, I'll talk to Dermot about a family. Well, not so much that it went cold; it had less opportunities. But he and his late mum have developed it. Do you and generally do you think buyers of fillies at the sales look at pedigrees in a different way to those of colts if they're going to buy a colt?
I think so. Because I think they'll look at a colt and they're not so. If the colt's a good-looking, good-moving, got the right action colt, he'll make a racehorse. Whether he makes, yet they're not probably in that market looking to buy a stallion in the commercial training thing. But then, if you've got the fillies, you'll be looking at her at a different thing. You'd like a little bit of pedigree as well as the looks and the action.
Tell me a little bit about, I mean, you're going through the pedigree, you're going through the catalogue before a yearling sale, sort of things that you rule out in the first instance. I mean, not concentrating on the sire line for the moment, but if you're looking at the dams' pedigrees, do you tend to be reluctant to buy the first produce or the second produce of an unraced mare? Do you question why she was unraced? Do you wonder? Is it a negative for you?
You would be a slight negative, unless it's a very good pedigree and you find out there's a reason why she wasn't raced. But I love buying up fillies that out of fillies that have produced in the probably first 2 or 3 foals that they've had winners, because if they produced winners, they're obviously producing sound horses, and what we all want is easier to train if the horse is sound as
Sure.
opposed to got problems. And you don't know when they're unraced. You have no idea why they're unraced. Sometimes there's a very good reason. They just, you suddenly get a very crooked foal out of a mare because you lay the wrong way. The rest of the family is perfectly all right. And you don't race her, and then she produces nice foals. I've seen that happen, but then you don't know whether some of them can't breathe.
Sure. And do you ask questions? I mean, would they be questions you'd ask when you go to look at an animal? Do you, do you accept maybe something that you wouldn't normally accept, but you see it's coming from a well-known breed or somebody who's producing horses all the time that are race horses that you'll maybe ignore every now and again?
Yeah, inquire. You'd look at the pedigree. You'd look at the thing. You'd look at the individual. You'd ask if you know it's not a pinhook. It's an actual owner breeder. You'd ask, where's that one gone? Did that one race? Did the mare race? Why was the problem? Yeah, you'd ask in conversation those questions, which I think is good to us because you need as much information as you can. As I always think it's crazy. We buy yearlings, we see them walk up and down, stand still, and then we pay for them. And there's no more than you don't even see them trot. At least you've got the national hunt sales; they're all made trot. But the yearlings don't; they only walk. So people, it's the only thing. The people who really think we're complete crazy are in the half-bred business or the show jumping, eventing side of the business. They, when they buy an animal, they inspect it from every angle. It gets jumped, it gets this, it gets that. So, and we just look at it and
And I suppose it's that diversity of approaches and a diversity of wants and needs and likes that make this industry so fantastic. I mean, there's no guarantees with it.
There's no guarantees, and luckily, we all like different horses. Dermot will like a horse. I won't like it for some other reason. He'll look at me buying a horse saying, what the hell is she buying that? Didn't she see it's got this or that or the other? But that's what happens. We all have, luckily, we all like different things and there's lots of ways to skin a cat.
Sure. And was your approach in terms of the national hunt element, because I want to make sure that we focus on that too. I mean, when you were buying national hunt horses, buying store horses, I know it sounds a simple question, but is it a very different process to buying a yearling to go racing on the flat, or are there a lot of the same principles?
Basically, a lot of the same principles. You're looking for a well-balanced, good mover, reasonably correct animal that you like. There's no use looking at, you look at an animal, pulled out whether it'll be a 2-year-old, yearling, 2-year-old, 3-year-old. You have to like the first impression. Because I always say, if you've got to train the animals, you've got to like looking at them every morning.
Sure.
Because that's what makes you get up in the morning to go and train those horses.
Do you find when you go to the sales, it's slightly off target, but if you go to the sales, is it easier to, if you like a horse at the start, first impressions, like that horse, is it harder to dislike aspects of it than it is to grow to love a horse that you probably had a question mark about in the first instance?
I always go on their first impression is your best impression.
Okay.
It's rather like your first decision is usually the right decision.
Sure.
Until you start questioning yourself and making up ideas why you shouldn't do something.
Yeah. Ironically, you should say that, because one thing that struck me when I spoke to Johnny that time about dance speed, was he said for a long time afterwards, he questioned what was wrong with her, what had he missed? He had liked her, obviously. Yeah. He had bought her. Yeah. But she had cost so little money that he'd found himself then thinking, there was no better judge of a horse. But he found himself questioning, what was the problem? What did everybody else see that he didn't see? But his first impression was
he liked her.
He liked her.
Yeah.
And
no, it does happen. You think, why did I get that so cheap? Maybe I missed something, but sometimes you do miss things. But anyway,
that's another day's story. Well, we'll hear that in confession, okay?
Yeah.
Are there maybe just finally for now, are there any changes you would make to encourage more mares and fillies to be raced? And I suppose especially here in Ireland, is the programme good enough? And you know it from both the flat and national hunt side of things. Is the programme good enough? Are there needs for change?
I think we've come a long way. You can touch on it, the fact of giving the fillies and mares too much in national hunt with £7 against the geldings. But I don't think so. I think it's great for encouragement. a main thing would be, keep the prize money keep going up, because that, if people can afford to, if the prize money is good enough, they can put fillies and mares into training, and if they win a race or race and a half, they've got most of their expenses back, and that is what we should be aiming for. That if you have a horse in training, that you can, and win a couple of races, that you should be covered with your.
But I mean, are you finding that, and particularly in the flat, I mean, the idea that you've won your black type race at 3, the programme is, not just in Ireland, but I suppose internationally, is now strong enough to warrant actually holding on to that mare for another year to go into training, to stay in training?
Oh yeah, I think so, definitely, because I've had people that have kept their fillies in training at 4 or even 5. I think as long as they stay sound, why not? If they can earn money racing, you never know, they might have a disaster once they've gone to stud, and we all know those can happen.
So your message to Horse Racing Ireland, a few more quid in the
few
kitty.
more quid in the pot. We're always looking for that, for more money in the pot.
Okay. Listen, for the moment, and again, the alarm is going off. Thank you very much. Jessie Harrington. Dermot, we're on to you now. I suppose, where does one start when it comes to talking about the successful career of veterinarian Dermot Weld? The numbers are simply amazing and still growing. I think 21 champion trainer titles here in Ireland, landmark victories around the world. Dermot has, in his spare time, also enjoyed many notable successes under national hunt rules. However, it is his record as a flat handler that stands loud and proud above all else, with victories in all the Irish Classics, the Derby Oaks and 2,000 Guineas in Britain, classic success in France, Italy and Germany, and that historic Belmont Stakes win in 1990 with Go and Go. Dermot has conquered all corners of the globe, rewrote the history of the Melbourne Cup, and has even had Brendan Gleeson play him in a movie. The hunger for success is no less strong today, and he saddled Tahira to win last year's Irish 1,000 Guineas, while this year brought more classic glory with Azalea, when Azalea won the Irish Oaks, and of course that was all for His Highness the Aga Khan's studs. Dermot, I suppose a feature of your success over the years from Roswell House has been your strong association with breeders who have long histories of developing families. I suppose particularly the Judmont Group, Giltown back in the days, Moydlair stud, and then more recently with the Aga Khan studs. How important have these associations been to you as a trainer?
I think they've been vital, and I've been very fortunate and very lucky in life. And then, of course, to get the opportunity to train from wonderful families that down through different generations have produced top-class horses.
I mean, they do all the organisations, did they all have a very similar approach to their breeding, do you think, or were there differences?
No, not necessarily. I think they have differences. I think whether big breeders or small breeders, we're all going to have differences and differences of opinions, and this is what makes it all so enjoyable and so exciting.
Fillies, you've had great success with them. I mean, I was looking at your fillies and mares roll of honour. In Ireland, 6 Irish 1,000 Guineas, 2 Irish Oaks. You won with fillies 3 times, 3 of your 9 Irish St. Leger victories, 4 Matron Stakes, 2 Moydlair Stud Stakes, 4 Pretty Polly Stakes, even a Grade 1 winner over hurls with unaccompanied for the Moydlair organisation. Maybe just go back a little bit to a filly I mentioned to you earlier, and probably not remembered by some in the room today. Committed, who won the Prix de l'Abbé for you twice in France. Again, how she was an American bred. How she came into your radar, under your radar.
Yeah, she was bought at the September sales in Keeneland, and she wasn't an expensive filly. Memory serves, she was by a sire called Hagley, who stood in Virginia, And she was bought for about, I think it was $45,000 for Robert Sangster, who I trained for. And so she was very much under the radar. And she was a late developing filly. And each year she progressed for me. Reasonable 2-year-old only. Group filly as a 3-year-old. And I convinced them to keep her in training as a 4 and a 5-year-old. She changed ownership, I think, at the end of her 4-year-old career to Alan Poulsen. But she was a brilliant filly to train. She was very fast. She was twice, I stand corrected on this, champion sprinter of Europe. Certainly champion female sprinter of Europe. As I said, she won the Prix de la Baie twice for me. She won the Royal Ascot. She was just a really, really outstanding sprinter. But she got better with age, and as we got to know her, and I remember Mike Cannan giving her a great ride to win her final Prix de la Baie.
And back then, how difficult was it to convince owners to keep fillies in training? Because again, I suppose the money wasn't there to be necessarily won in prize money, but there was potential to breed from them and earn. So was it difficult to persuade them to keep?
Definitely, you know what I mean, because this is the whole thing, and Jessica has accurately commented on it. It's great if they're going to be group. I had to convince the then owner of Committed to keep her in training because the prize money wouldn't entice you. So getting right down to the lower level, if we wish to keep the listed level fillies in training, we've got to have a lot more encouragement vis-a-vis prize money. And I think a lot of the listed level races in Ireland, that Horse Racing Ireland, needs to really attend to this level.
I mean, I suppose maybe back then as well, I mean, and maybe in terms of debunking some old myths, I suppose there was always the view, or there was certainly when I was growing up, that, you know, those mares that were over-raced or those mares that excelled even at the highest levels were, you know, usually more masculine in conformation and probably would ultimately be poor breeders.
I think there was that concept at a certain stage, but I think that's been long since proved not to be totally accurate. You know, who's to say, but you'd much rather be breeding out of a champion race mare than out of a mare that's never won anything or has never run.
Sure. I'm going to put you on the spot now in terms of asking this question in front of Pat. But was it difficult to persuade the Aga Khan to keep some of those fillies in training for an extra year or two? Because again, it's not that he was somebody, but I mean, I suppose once they had achieved what they had achieved at 3, they were a valuable asset to the broodmare band. So was that or was the fact that they have such a good program now that it was easier to do?
The program that we have now, and with Tarnawa, we believed we could achieve even more, if you know what I mean, than what she'd already achieved, because she improved with every year, from a 2-year-old to a 3-year-old to a 4-year-old to a 5-year-old. You know what I mean? She kept progressing and winning more Group 1s, and she wound up being equal or joint champion race filly of the world. And so we had a good case to put. And but equally then with Tahira, who must remember was champion 2-year-old filly of Europe 2 years ago. And then when she won 3 Group 1s last year, it would be a difficult decision to encourage keep her in training as a 4-year-old when she's been a champion for the 2 previous years.
Sure. What especially do you enjoy about training mares and fillies?
Challenge.
You're not saying they're difficult.
No, they're different, and but they are more challenging. And I think Jessica would agree with me, or Willie would. You know what I mean? They just take a little bit more knowing, and but it's very satisfying. You know what I mean, when you can get the maximum consistency from them.
Can I maybe take a slightly different approach now with you in terms of, I'm just going to look at a family that you've had a special personal association with, and most people in the room will recognize all of the names in it. But again, just in terms of maybe understanding why, A, you might buy into a family, B, stick with it when it had presented few opportunities up close as such. That's the family of Nighttime who won the Irish 1,000 guineas in 2006 for your mum. I remember being in the parade ring that day. It was a joyous occasion. I think that and Grey Swallow were the big moments at racing for your mum. But I mean, she goes back to, Nighttime was out of a mare called Comshanon, and she in turn was out of a mare called Ridgepool. Now, Ridgepool was an Irish national stud-bred mare who failed to sell as a yearling, won as a 2-year-old. Michael Grassick trained her, and then she met with a bad injury. I think that she was lucky to survive it, in fact, afterwards. Now, she had only one sibling who was a stakes placed horse, Captain Lasso, and then Ridgepool produced Comshanon by Indian Ridge that you bought as a yearling?
That's right. I just loved her as an individual, and I was very partial to the particular stallion line. And Indian Ridge, I'd had a couple of very decent fillies by Indian Ridge, and I really liked him as a sire. And I was on the lookout with my mother for a filly by Indian Ridge. And I know the pedigree wasn't close up that strong, but if you look back on it, it had a wonderful taproot. In fact, it had been a very successful pedigree for Vincent O'Brien. And if you look back at it, there was a lot of fast horses that Vincent O'Brien trained in the pedigree. And I suppose that's what impressed us most of all. She was a very good individual. And while it was weak close up, and I agree, but if you go back on it, this is the interesting thing, of course, while we're all breeders, it was a strong pedigree. But it just had weakened it for a generation or two, but it was always capable of coming back.
Sure.
Here the pedigree is Indian Ridge, lovely filly, bought her. Took a little bit of time, but she went on to be a champion older race mare of Ireland.
I mean, she won 5 races. She managed in a time when there was less black type about. She managed to win a listed race down in Cork. But then at stud, she had 9 runners. She had 9 winners. Again, transmitting her soundness, transmitting her and her pedigree ability onto now obviously Nighttime was by some way her best filly. Were you ever tempted to, or was your mum ever tempted to maybe sell her, a classic winner, or was it always a question of maintaining it?
Nighttime, no, we were fortunate. Firstly, Comshanon is now 29 and in wonderful health, and very much part of our family. And Nighttime, no, we didn't. We'd never, when we were fortunate enough to breed her and win the guineas with her, it was always the plan to keep and breed from her.
Sure. I mean, she's gone on to become an exceptional broodmare. She has 8 winners herself already. Grade 1 winner, Zukova, you had an association with. Gayat, of course, the champion older horse in Europe, and standing up the road in Kildangan. Again, the soundness seems to be coming through very much in the family.
Sure. It's been a very sound. Every individual have had a degree of ability, from Group 1 ability to able to win at some level, but they were all very sound, and that was something that's always something I suppose we've always looked at. And my dear mother always looked at it as well, to try to buy into families that there's a good record of soundness.
Sure. I mean, it has been, as I say, a huge success. And again, it's one of those pedigrees that, is worth, I mean, it's, on top of all of that, of course, it's also produced exceptional sales horses as well. So, I mean, again, the good looks. I mean, dare say it, if you'd had a poor quality produce of Comshanon or whatever, would that have disappointed you? Did she?
Well, she was a lovely individual, and look, just also, Comshanon didn't cost a lot of money, meaning that money doesn't buy success.
Sure.
And this family all started from very little, and just developed. And as I said, we still have Competition on. She's 29 and she looks fantastic, but she was always a lovely individual.
Now, don't shock us and tell her she's in foal, knowing your ability.
No, she's retired. I have very strong views. No, she was retired years ago.
Absolutely. Look, again, thank you very much for those insights, Dermot, and I'm sure we'll have some questions for you later. Ladies and gentlemen, Dermot Weld. Now, I'm going to, again, just bear with me for a second, and I'll reset my 15 minutes of fame, Willie. Incredibly, now we have the youngest member of our trainers panel, Willie Mullins, who's a year and 8 days older than myself, I just discovered this morning. 17 times Irish National Hunt champion, the most successful trainer in the history of the Cheltenham Festival, with more than 100 victories there, actually 103 to be exact. The past season saw Willie win yet another Irish title, but of huge significance, of course, was the fact that he became the first trainer based in Ireland to win the British title since Vincent O'Brien exactly 70 years ago. There's no significant national hunt race, to my knowledge, that he hasn't won, and he's even trained the winner of a few important races on the flat, Wicklow Brave, of course, in the Irish St. Leger, True Self in Australia and Saudi Arabia. And I was actually fortunate in the past week to interview Neville Eager for the Owners Association's upcoming magazine, and what a wonderful story that was. On the breeding front, Jackie and their son Patrick have enjoyed certainly a few highlights, and Jackie will be in the spotlight later on, having bred a very, very good filly and winning an award for that. And maybe just on the filly front, let me throw a few names out there. Quivega, the dam of Facile Vega. Annie Power, the dam of mystical power. Tourist Attraction, I think she was your first big one, wasn't she?
First Cheltenham winner, yes.
First Cheltenham winner, beating Philip Myerscough.
That's right.
To his chagrin, I think, at the time.
Ventana.
And the North Kildare Rugby Club, yeah. That was a wonderful day. Lossiemouth, Coolreevy, Beanie Dido, Glenn's Melody, Augusta Kate, the dam of Baby Kate. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, Willie. Maybe let's deal with the elephant in the room first. You've enjoyed enormous success in recent years with French breds, but not exclusively, and I suppose that's a key to say. You've also been a huge fan of fillies and mares. So what is it about training the mares that appeals to you?
Like Jesse said earlier on, it's easier by mares. They're cheaper. It's easier to acquire them. I think Tourist Attraction we acquired, John O'Connor told me his uncle had a lovely mare, and I've been starting training and looking for anything I could get for nothing basically, and we leased her off John. But price is the thing, and that you could get stock into your yard to train.
I mean, you've made it's quite a focus for you in terms of the makeup of your yard. I mean, you're as keen to have a filly and a mare in it as you are to have a gelding.
Definitely. My father trained mares, Dawn Run and Harry Harriet, and so training mares to me wasn't difficult or wasn't something that shouldn't be done. Well, at the time, I think a lot of English national hunt trainers would never have a mare in training, which I found fascinating. Mares took longer because I think breeders, especially jump breeders, didn't feed probably their young fillies. They didn't feed them the same way as the geldings that were going to be sold, the foals or the yearlings or the 3-year-olds that were going to be sold. So you had to take longer with them to actually make up where the feeding that they missed, I think. And we all know mares, they take a little bit, maybe a lighter training. Some of them can take very hard training, but others take lighter training, but they stay fitter with less training. We found over the years, you don't have to really grind them as much. They probably eat less, I find, though they take less training. And once you tap into what the mare does, what she likes, like any female, that's it. Happy wife, happy life, you know. So
I mean, I'll come to it again, a little bit more in a few minutes. But I mean, again, I suppose historically in Ireland, you know, breeders who had a filly, I mean, for a lot of them, that was probably a disaster at the time. But if you ended up having a half sister to a horse that won a decent race or whatever, the inclination was get her covered straight away.
Get her covered straight away.
So they weren't given opportunities back then, for sure.
We feel that, and also the new mare scheme. You know, a lot of people resisted it at the time, but I felt that it was just national hunt racing growing up. That on the flat you had Fillies classics for 200 years, the Guineas and the Oaks, and in national hunt racing you had nothing to encourage mares to race, and you know, so I think national hunt racing is still only catching up with flat racing, and it's thanks to Mr. Flood in Boardsmill that this, you know, we are growing up. We're seeing far better mares racing. We can encourage owners to buy mares now because I can get an owner to spend a lot of money on a mare with the view that if it breaks down, you have something to go back to breed from. It's not all dead money, and it can be very hard sometimes to get an owner to spend big money on a gelding, whereas a mare, top class mare, okay, they see the upside, and that's a big plus, I think, in our game.
Sure. And I mean, credit to the organisation, to the ITBA. I mean, when William Flood came forward with the notion of the Fillies schemes and decent payments when they won certain races, again, incredibly, there was a kickback against it in some quarters.
Yeah, it's extraordinary to think of nowadays. That,
Yeah.
you know,
But then does that make you even more incredulous to think that Cheltenham were thinking in some ways of, I know it's gone now but the idea of restricting the mares
in the
Chel-
Grade 1 race.
yes.
Yeah, there was
I
talk
mean-
that they were going to, mares that had won a Grade 1 in the previous 13 months.
yeah.
So basically, the mare who won the Grade 1 novice in Fairyhouse, wasn't entitled to run
In the Grade 1
against-
mares hurl at Cheltenham.
at Cheltenham, which is extraordinarily ridiculous.
Yeah, but I mean, there's certain little remnants of that still there. But surely, I mean, I remember one of the big arguments at the time was, you know, well, Jigginstown don't have any mares and JP has very few mares. But of course, when the mares races were there and they wanted to win an owners' championship,
Yeah, we bought Apple's Jade for Jigginstown, and that completely turned their thinking around. That they thought, wow, we can have top class mares, and now they're
yeah,
quite open to any good mares that we might put to them.
sure. When I speak with Harold Kirk after he buys a store, and he will always reference something like the Dam was a great cross-country mare in France, and you know we like the sire. He's an up-and-coming sire, but almost before he'll talk about the sire or the value of the sire, I always find him very keen to talk about the Dam line. Is he reflecting your thoughts on this?
I think so. You know, we both talk a lot about it, but we love mares with good pedigrees, with plenty of stamina in the pedigrees. And then if you're lucky enough to have a nice, sharp horse with that, that's what we would go for if we're buying mares that haven't raced.
Sure. I mean, we've spoken about it previously, but you know, again, there's always, you know, I feel when I'm doing my breeding insights column in the Irish Field and that as well, and I'm looking at families, one of the things that strikes me is that it's not a recent phenomenon in France that, you know, these stores are coming over here on the route of winning mares. You go back 3-4 generations in the family and all the dams will have run and won. Do you think that change is happening here now because of what we have now, that in the next 10 years we're going to see a refocus on demand for those better families in
I'm
Ireland?
not so sure, because I think the Irish breeder is very stuck in his ways. The national hunt breeder, maybe not the flat breeder, but the national hunt breeder is. And they don't like putting horse in training. There's very few breeders would have horse in training, and they're inclined to breed from any half sister, whether it's good or bad. Whereas in France, I think they're much sharper. If they don't get out on the racetrack and perform, they bin them. I think, give them away. But there's a big difference in French racing. They've got huge prize money, so the breeders can afford to take their horses to a trainer and put it in training, take their mare to a trainer, put it in training, and win prize money, and that's an end in itself. And then if they're no good, get rid of them. The good ones go back to stud. And I think crucially in France, they don't race them till they're 7, 8, 9, or 10 like we do in Ireland. We race our mares as race horses. In France, they race their mares as potential brood mares. They race them at 3, 4, and 5, and then off to stud. Maybe stud at 4 even. But they don't, even though the prize money is there. But I think we find too about French racing, the level of prize money after you're 5 years of age, unless you can compete at the Paris tracks for the big prize money, you're back down the country. So if you have a well-bred mare, no interest, you don't have any interest in going back down the country. So you're steered towards breeding. But the crucial thing is, I think the breeders can afford to race because of the higher prize money at 3, 4, and 5.
Now, I'm going to, I obviously write about and celebrate the success of these horses as well. But I'm going to suggest as well that black type is harder to earn in this part of the world than it is in France. And sometimes I'm
not so sure I agree with you. We've a lot of black type races in Ireland.
Yeah, no, but I'm just going to instance one, and again, it's we won't put on gloves yet or anything. But like, I sometimes see the Pre-Fino hurl listed, and I think it's the only race the animal won. It's there's plenty of Pre-Fino hurls, it seems, around, and I sometimes wonder, is it an illusion on the page that the pedigree is a bit better than it really is, or would you have a different view on that?
I'd have a different view. I mean, take Crevega, her family, there's tremendous winners in it, no black type, because she was a country mare down the country family, local breeder, and at that time they had the French national studs, and they had national studs all over the country,
yeah.
And the breeder never left 20, 30 miles up the road, as far as he would go.
Yeah.
That whole system has changed now, I think, to the detriment of the French breeders, but and you don't have black type races down the country in France. So unless you came up to Paris, you didn't get black type, and the Pre-Fino was run in Paris. I wouldn't agree that they have the same amount of black type races we have.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, it's just sometimes again
for the population, and when you look at the French jumping population, it's about I'd say a quarter of the Irish population, maybe even less.
Sure.
And look at the success they have in Ireland and England.
Yeah,
it's tremendous.
And again, I suppose it comes down to, again, it's just another question, and then we'll be moving on. But I'll ask you maybe for a bit of advice in terms of the Irish breeders, and I suppose you've given us some of it. But is there a need as well to change the whole system of producing stores? And obviously the fact that in France they come to hand much earlier. I mean, and again, I'm saying this just as a matter of fact, and not in any way. But a lot of the best of the French horses that come here, I mean, this is going to be tested in the years to come now, because a lot more French-bred horses are appearing at stores in the Irish sales. Again, to the upset of some native Irish breeders. But a lot of the horses who've performed very well from France over here have been horses that raced in France. They had shown something, so they've been bought on the basis of an ability shown, rather than as an unproven store horse.
I think there's two questions that you're bringing up there. One, should we change our system to bring in more 3-year-old national hunt horses? And two, is it going to be nurture or nature? Will the French breds that have been bought as foals, running in point to points, will they come through our system?
Yeah.
Will the good ones come?
Yeah.
So we're all waiting to see
how that happens. That's a work in progress.
Going back to the program, I feel that's going to be very difficult because we have a program that sets out to bring national hunt horses in at the autumn of their 4-year-old career, and they race from 4 to 10, 12. In France, it's from 3 to probably 9 years of age, and it's a whole different system. And I feel if we go to change our system, we'll have neither one nor the other.
Okay.
So
Right.
I think we stick with what we have. I prefer stick what we have, let the French stick to what they have. I mean, when you go over to France and see some of the 3-year-old horses running, if they were in Ireland, we wouldn't dream of running them till they were 4.5. You know, they're huge, big, angular, different shape horses.
Right.
They're nurtured differently, they're bred differently, and
maybe not last.
they last when they come into the Irish system. I think they change. In France, they just like bringing on the new ones all the time.
Right.
I wouldn't say they don't last, but I would say if you go to France with your Irish eyes, you'll come home with nothing.
Right.
You've got to change your outlook when you're looking at them.
Okay. And just finally, and when I gave 16 minutes to give a piece of advice to the Irish breeder.
Oh, I would say you've got to performance. I would say race your mares unless she has a great family and maybe some little defect that she can't race. But I think stop breeding from the mares that don't perform on the racetrack. That'll be the simplest thing. That I think we breed from too many mares that don't deserve to be bred from.
Okay. Listen, thank you very much for that, ladies and gentlemen. Willie Mullins. Now, I'm very conscious that I have 10 minutes now. If there are any questions from anybody in the audience that you want to ask, we'll take them, but just try and keep them precise and short if you don't mind, and we'll see if we can get 4 or 5 questions.
A few of the speakers mentioned prize money levels, and Willie Mullins said prize money in France is huge. I have 2 2-year-olds. They're in training in France, in pre-training. They're going in training shortly. I'll put a number on the difference in prize money between Ireland and France. For €1 prize money in France, my calculation is it's €3.55. Sorry, €1 in Ireland, it's €3.55 in France. So if we're worried about getting people into breeding or ownership, I think we need to do something about the prize money. 3.5 times as much in France.
Okay.
Things on?
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah. You know, that's exactly where we see it. That the French breeder is encouraged to race, and he's given the prize money. But of course, our levy system, or whatever we want to call it, you know, they have the pari-mutuel over there, and a lot more money comes back into racing, and we just can't compete with it either in Ireland or in England. Unfortunately, I can't see any in our lifetime. I can't see it getting any better. I think that's what will happen. I see a lot of, especially English owners, instead of coming to Ireland, they're going to France for the prize money, and maybe Irish breeders will do the same. It's not that simple either. Now, my wife has a few mares in France, and they're different.
Well, I'll just add to my comments. I bought a mare in France in December. I selected a sire in France that she's going to go to. So she was boarded.
We'll just get you a microphone there. Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I bought a mare at Arcana sales last December. It's in France, obviously, you know that. The mare has been boarded in France since then, and she went to a French stallion, and now she's in foal, and she's going to stay in France, and probably the foal will be reared in France. It's a gradual process. I mean, I had a horse in pre-training here, didn't make the course, but things are moving in that direction simply because there's nothing here.
I think you've made
make it even break even.
You've made a good decision, and it'll be interesting to see how it works out. You know, you have better opportunity at prize money, and it's going to be interesting. Like as I said, we've done it ourselves. We don't race them in France now. We bring them back, but we just like access to a few different sires that we're not getting in Ireland, and you know, it's an experiment for us as well. So we wish you well with your one. We'll keep an eye on you.
Absolutely, keep us informed. Well, of course, bear in mind we also have the crack in Ireland. That's, as for owners, that's a big part of it as well. Well, certainly compared to racing maybe across the water. Any other questions before? Because as I say, we're up against the clock, and a couple of our panelists have runners in the first. Clodagh.
Hi, just wondering if the panel feel that the weight allowance for fillies in races helps them be competitive with colts and geldings.
I would. You alluded to the fact that £7 might be too much, or were you the opposite? Sorry.
There was talk last year that £7 was too much for the fillies. I suppose they were alluding to the honeysuckle winning the champion hurdle. You know, that's what they were saying. Oh, £7. How can a gelding compete with a top class filly? £7. I don't think it is too much. I think keep it at £7, and I think it does help, and it does encourage people to compete, as you probably found, against the geldings with some fillies.
I think it's a legitimate question. £7 was needed maybe to get mares and fillies to compete and make them, that they're competitive. But I think it's, how long have we the £7 in, Leo, can you think?
Gosh, I couldn't say for
10, 12 years?
Oh, maybe 10, 12, 15 years.
And we've had some fantastic mares coming through. You know, when you look at the champion hurdle, the amount of champion mares that have won the champion hurdle, I think it's a question that hasn't been answered yet, and maybe over the next 10 years, people might change their attitude.
It might reduce it to 5, but I think it's encouraged people to run mares.
Yeah.
And I think, not every year you're going to have an exceptional mare.
No, but we've had lots, and I shouldn't be saying this because I train mares, so I should be looking for £9. But anyhow, but I think it's a legitimate question, yeah.
Yeah, and yet, Dermot, it seems to be something that's quite set in stone on the flat. I mean, they've reached, there's an equilibrium in terms of the weight allowance, and it's been there for a long time now.
There's also, I feel, a few races where fillies and mares only get £3.
Yeah.
And I think that should be increased to £5.
Right.
Even quickly looking through the race card, there's a race even today, I'm not certain, but there's just a £3 allowance for fillies and mares, and I think it should be 5.
Okay.
I think in France, is it only 2 kilos? For
Yeah.
mares? I should know.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I think it's only 2 kilos.
Well, now 2 kilos is £4.5 pounds,
Yeah.
so I suppose it's getting to the £5
Yeah.
area as well. So, no. Any other questions? One more, yes.
Hi, I know a lot of people would say that keeping a horse's mind sound is just as important for their success on the track as anything else. Just wondering if you agree with that, and if so, do you have any special techniques for especially fillies to keep their mind good when they're in training?
Well, soundness in the pedigree. I remember I love what we call Congo pedigrees, a horse that wins in the Congo, wins in Finland, wins in Norway, wins in South Africa, wins. When I look at a pedigree like that, and I think there mightn't be any black type in it, but I say there is sound because they're running on bell metal ground everywhere. And I remember when I got married first, I bought a beautiful big filly, 3 trunks of legs. I say this filly will never break down. She had 1 horse in the pedigree down around the 3rd dam. The first day I ran her, she broke down. The only good thing about it was I sold her and she paid for my honeymoon. But I learned a big lesson. I said I'm never buying a 1-horse pedigree again. So I think you can see soundness on the page. I would rather buy what I call a Congo pedigree than a horse that's a half-sister to something, or half-brother to something that has nothing on the rest of the page. You can, to me, you can go in and look at them. We've trained plenty of horses that are crooked, that offset this, that, and the other. And when I look at the page and I see their sound, I'll take a chance on that. I won't take a chance on an oil painting that hasn't got runners on the page.
And I think you'll see it as well if people look at the pedigrees closely enough, because it is one piece of information that is available in the first 3-4 dams. It will tell you the number of foals, the number of runners, the number of winners. And you look at National Hunt pedigrees and light enough pedigrees, and you'll sort of see second dam of 9 foals, 3 runners, 2 winners. Okay, so what happened the other 7? And then you go to the next dam, is dam of 12 foals, 10 runners, 2 winners. I think, listen, this is repeating itself.
And the other thing, when you mention that, a lot of pages leave off that information, which I don't agree with. I think it should be on every page, but maybe that's up to us then, if you like something, to go to Weatherby's and get the full page. But
yeah, sure, yeah.
I think sales catalogues,
yeah.
that question brings up sales catalogues. Are they genuine enough?
Yeah. Well, I suppose they're a sales window, but as you say, no, I think they have to be truthful and factual as well. I am conscious that it is 13:14, and I am going to draw up stumps now for the first part. We are going to have the presentation of awards, so I know 1 or 2 people need to leave and go about their business, but we will proceed with the awards now. Is that right, Danielle? Yeah, we'll go straight ahead. So first of all, a big thank you to our 4 panelists today, giving up their time. You want to head away, do you? Go on, you slip away. Yeah, as I say, I know, Dermot, you have to go and you have to stay. Okay, Willie, you might stay with us. Just, make us look.
Yep.
You need.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Do we need these?
No, just go ahead. No, you'll be fine. You're done. Thanks a million. Thank you, thanks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please don't leave us, because we are going, there's some food coming out, and secondly, we have, most importantly, a number of the South Leinster award winners going to receive their trophies. So just if you could, for the next 10 minutes or so, just give us your attention, that would be wonderful. And as I say, we will have some refreshments coming now. I think bear with me, I haven't had a chance to check that who's here to receive particular awards, so we'll do our best with them. Our first award is the 2023 Overseas Horse Award, and this is for an acclamation gelding who has just been a sensation in Hong Kong and Australia and Japan. I think to date he's won 15 races, he's won £15 million in prize money. The horse is Romantic Warrior. He was bred in partnership by Corduff Stud and Tim Rooney in the United States. And I'm hoping that James Egan is here. Oh, Henrietta is here. Better still, welcome forward our Hen Egan to receive the trophy, and congratulations to Connections. I know from many conversations with Hen that this horse is particularly close to her heart, and so it's really appropriate that she is taking the trophy. So well done to Hen. Well done. Our second award is the 2023 Older Horse Award, and this goes to a son of Dark Angel out of Evening Time. This fellow was judged the joint champion older sprinter in Europe last year, sold for 110,000 as a yearling at Goffs. He went on to win the British Champion Sprint Stakes at Group 1 at Ascot and the Group 2 Greenland Stakes and a host of other races. He was bred by Owenstown Bloodstock, and that is Mr. John Tuttle. And this horse comes from, this gelding comes from a family, the long association with John and his late aunt. And our congratulations on a richly deserved award. Thank you very much, John. The 2023 two-year-old award, this goes to last year's Coventry Stakes winner, and this horse was placed in the Middle Park Stakes. He was placed in the Pre-Morney Group 1, and he was classic placed this year as well. Sold for 480,000 guineas as a yearling. He's a son of Wootton Bassett. He's River Tiber and bred by Peerhouse Stud. And I think we have Brendan Moran here. So well done, Brendan. And team, a very, very smart colt indeed. And as I say, one of the best juveniles of last year, Royal Ascot winner, classic place this year. So congratulations to all that team. Now, here's... Who? Okay, all right. This is for really an exceptional filly. If you read your Irish Field yesterday or read it later on tonight, I've written about Porta Fortuna, a 3-year-old daughter of Caravaggio, and what an outstanding race mare. She won the Cheveley Park Stakes last year. She's gone on this year to win the Coronation at Ascot, the Falmouth Stakes more recently. She was runner-up in the 1,000 guineas. The Phoenix Stakes last year, placed in the Moydlair, third. That was the only time she's finished out at the first two. And of course, she was runner-up in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf last year. Exceptional filly, trained by Donegal O'Brien, bred by his parents, Aidan and Anne-Marie, in Whisperview Trading. And it's a pleasure to welcome Anne-Marie here to take the trophy. And as I said, wonderful family occasion, because actually Too Precious, the dam was trained by Joseph O'Brien. The sire was trained by Aidan. I mean, talk about a monopoly, but well done. Congratulations. A really, really exceptional filly and fully deserving of an award. I'm sure it won't be the last that she'll earn for you, Anne-Marie. The best 3-year-old colt of last year was a son of Churchill out of a Darshan mare. This was the Foxes. He is a brother to Matterhorn, who's a very, very good horse, won the Group 1 in Dubai, to Bangkok, who's embarked on a stallion career now, and actually out of a mare who I think has bred 6 stakes winners from an exceptional nursery down in Grange Con, that of Barronstown Stud. Please welcome Deanne Nagel. Well done to Deanne and herself and David, of course, with an exceptional farm down in Barronstown. They've bred so many good horses over the years, and the success continues. And our final flat award, and then we'll have a number of National Hunt Awards. Our final flat awards goes to a filly that we have spoken about earlier today. She was the champion 2-year-old filly in Europe in 2022. She was an exceptional race mare at 3. She won the Moydlair, of course, as a 2-year-old. Last year, she won the Coronation at Royal Ascot, the Irish 1,000 Guineas, and the Matron Stakes. And on her only 2 other starts, she was runner-up in the 1,000 Guineas and placed in the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes. She's off to her new career at the Aga Khan Studs. And please welcome, on behalf of His Highness the Aga Khan Studs, Pat Downs. And of course, to hear a half-sister to Tarnarwa, the mare that we talked about, having stayed in training until she was 5. So really, really exceptional family. Now, we have 3 recipients present of the 4 award winners in the National Hunt category. The first one is the Hurdler Award, and this goes to, appropriately enough, a walk in the park mare, Ashrow Diamond. She won the Grade 1 Honeysuckle Mares Novice Hurl at Fairy House, and that was among her 4 hurdle wins. She's also won 2 bumpers. She's only run 13 times in all. She was bred by Jackie Mullins, and please welcome Jackie to receive her trophy. And actually, when you look at her pedigree, she's a lovely mix of the Irish and French, because she is an Irish bred, obviously, but she's out of a French bred half-sister to Kellis Brie, who, of course, won the Hennessy Gold Cup Grade 1. So an example of the breeding up in both countries working together. So well done to Jackie. The breeder of Hewick, William Quinn, isn't able to be with us today, but he won this Hewick, who everybody knows about Hewick, the 850 euro Goresbridge purchase, who's won 10 times in all, and a pot of prize money that's unbelievable. But William Quinn receives the Chaser Award. The 2023 National Hunt Novice Award is won by a man who didn't have to travel too far today to be here. It's for a son of the lesser-known Solskjaer, out of a mare by Gone Fishing, and certainly one of these breeding operations that deserves full credit. Really, really nice to produce from this family. Thomas Fahey is the breeder of Found a 50, who of course won the Grade 1 at Leopardstown and a Grade 1 at Cheltenham, runner-up at Aintree rather, and runner-up at Cheltenham. So please welcome Thomas Fahey. And Thomas is from a famous Fahey family around the Monasterevin area, so if your name is Fahey, F-A-H-E-Y, you probably have something to do with successful horses. So well done, Thomas. And our final award is the Small Breeder Award. Now, unfortunately, Paul Hillis, who is the recipient of it, isn't here. I think Dean Sinnott is going to take the trophy on his behalf. But this is for Paul, who bred none other than the Grand National winner, Corrick Rambler. And Paul is a man who enjoyed, well, he bred the horse, he bought back into the horse, so he celebrated the Grand National victory. And Paul is also, I know, he's a sponsor of racing at Wexford as well, so well done to him. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's it for now. Enjoy the refreshments, thank you for your attention, and enjoy your day at the races.